The following is an exclusive presentation of Jessup Broadcasting, the sports leader in Southeast Georgia.
World famous. The world famous Butch and Bob Show.
At 8 o'clock, it is time for the world-famous Butch and Bob Show on WIFO-FM Jessup, brought to you by Murphy Builder Supply, Nips Car Wash, and Suchero's Restaurant. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Jonathan. Got a special guest in the studio. School Superintendent Jay Brinson just had a work session yesterday. A lot going on in the school system, and just thought we'd get the superintendent here, go over everything that's going on. Let's talk about the projects that are going on, because there's a lot going on. They're resurfacing the track at the JC Stadium for the walking track. That's just about completed. They just started the gymnasium floor at the Benny Ratliff Arena, so the volleyball game is going to be at Jessup Elementary tomorrow. The new track's on the horizon. If I missed anything, what else is going on?
Yeah, a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot going on.
Yeah. Good morning, guys. Appreciate you, giving me some time this morning. Just kind of sharing. You're exactly right. A lot going on. It's that time of the year. Everybody's back in school. We're kind of almost a weekend to school. So we're just trying to get back into the routine. And like I said, our big projects, our capital projects throughout the system, are off and running. Like I heard you say earlier this morning, the taxpayers, supported the East Block, so that enables us to keep, upgrading our infrastructure, which is, it's big, it's huge. We're not a small system. We're considered a medium-sized school district in comparison to the rest of the state. But just like you said, we update, like at JC Stadium, the walking track's almost completed. We still got some landscaping and all to do, but pretty much he's done with laying the asphalt. He's going to let it sit a little bit. It's been very hot, and when you need rain, he didn't get it when we were trying to get asphalt down. It was raining every afternoon, but that project will be done here by the end of the month. It'll be nice and clean and crisp for the first football game, and like I said, we done that with the idea of trying to address some of those specifications as far as room. So you'll notice that there will be a little bit of a different layout there. We had to expand the actual football playing surface into the track a little bit. So, but I think it's going to be aesthetically pleasing. They came in yesterday, and it was actually after lunch before they arrived for the gym floor. And wow, I wouldn't be surprised if they got the gym floor up this morning. I hadn't been by there, but they jumped on it. It's amazing how they just jumped in there and started the demo, which is the first step. So they're working on that. That'll be completed within the next 35 days or so. So it'll be all brand new and crisp and clean for the end of volleyball season and beginning of basketball season. So we're excited about that. That's well overdue. That floor, had some problems. Plus it's 20 years old, and we felt like we just need to give it a facelift. So that was one of our East Block projects that we identified, back several years ago before the election. One thing I'm really excited about is, we decided to put the track at the high school. There's a wetlands issue there, and anytime you have wetlands, you have to obtain a permit. Well, that's a long process that you have to go through and get a lot of folks to sign off on it and make sure you're not encroaching on, rare animal life, flowers, grasses, weeds. I mean, there's a lot of things you got to take care of. But we got notification yesterday that the Georgia Department of Natural Resources had signed off on it, so now it's finally getting to the Army Corps of Engineers, which is the final level of approval. Once they give us the permit, they will be able to begin. We've identified we've already named our contractor, for that project, as well as the James E. Bacon project, TQ Constructors out of Middle Georgia. So we have our funds available. We passed the bonds referendum. That enables us to get these projects started now, so we're excited about that. That's moving along. I'm optimistic that hopefully we'll see an advertisement go out here in the next 2 to 3 weeks for public input. So if there's any comments the public wants to submit, that's what that advertisement's for. Please, submit that, and our folks will handle that, and that'll be considered by the Army Corps engineer on that project. And then maybe 2 months or so we'll be ready to actually begin the new track. So that's exciting as well. What else do we have going on?
We mentioned James E. Bacon.
Yeah,
you got the funding, but everybody keeps asking that. When will we see movement on that?
Well,
during the school year?
Last night the board finally approved the final piece to that. And again, it's all about process. It's all about getting those approval, and everything's a step to ensure you're going to be able to use those state funds. It's not, I won't say free funds, but the state of Georgia allocates monies every year for capital projects in school systems, but you have to apply for it, and there's a process to go through. And last night our board had the final approval after it was approved by the Georgia Department of Education's facility division. It came back to us, and so they approved it last night. So we are ready to begin. We have to send that in. Has to be processed, but other than that, we'll be working with a contractor, the architect, to get that final design. And the new construction part, that's what's going to, obviously we have school going on. We got to be very careful not to disrupt what's going on there. So that'll be a big part at the beginning, getting the plan together on not to disturb school, drop off and pick up. That's where our buses, the new construction is going to go out in that parking lot a little bit. Of course, we'll have to, fence it off where no children can, get into the construction area. A lot like we did at Odom Elementary. We built Odom Elementary, the new facility right behind the old facility, but that was also the playground, for the students at the time. So it'll look a lot like that. But we should begin that in the next, I'll say 30 to 60 days, probably closer to 60 days.
And the good news last night was mentioned that the last payment for Odom Elementary, Martha Ross Smith, will be sometime.
Yeah, I think the whole county should be proud of that.
Everything's paid for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how we've done business in the school system. We've had great boards of education that make sure that occurs, and they hold the personnel, all the way down to the school levels with the principals to make sure that they're being fiscally responsible. Where we're passing the East Blast, we're completing the projects, and we're making that last bond payment, which means we've paid for those projects through tax dollars, and also through bonds. That costs money, but we're making the last payment as a school system for last 5-year projects, Odom Elementary and Martha Ross Smith to be specific, within the next 30 days. I think it's due in September.
All right, so that's this last East Blast that they passed was for the James E. Bacon. That was the number one project. Track was another project, so now those projects are underway.
And they're beginning, that's
right.
correct. So we're finishing up payment for one, and we've started the others. That's correct.
As we mentioned, school year just started, but you gave the numbers last night, 1,400 plus at the high school, pretty much good number. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. The middle school numbers, 13 students separate. I mean,
right.
They were almost identical. That's amazing.
It is, and that's something, the board charged me, I guess really 2 boards ago, charged me when I come on board, to get these schools more balanced. And we really wanted to avoid, there's been some discussion about rezoning our systems, and some school systems rezone every year. Bigger systems, they have to make sure their schools are equitable in numbers, ethnic makeup, in socioeconomic makeup. There's a lot of things that go into that. They have to meet certain criteria for us to be able to draw down state and federal funds. So we made a decision, I think it was about 4 years ago, we weren't doing any more variances. There was a state law at one time that said people, students got to choose wherever they wanted to go. Well, then there was another law passed that, school systems choose to be a charter system or a strategic waiver system, which gave them the flexibility to waive a lot of state laws. Well, that was one of the laws that we chose to waive, is that school choice, House Bill 251. We waived that. That's no longer the case. And what that's enabled us to do is, force people to go to the school that they're zoned for, that they live in that zone. There are exceptions to that, and with Scriven's numbers are still low, so we still have open enrollment to Scriven, Martha Ross Smith, and Martha Puckett. Well, after this year, I think we're going to have to consider, maybe pulling that back for Martha Puckett and Martha Ross Smith, because it's worked. I mean, Martha Ross Smith Elementary School has actually more students now than James E. Bacon School does, and that's only actually about 50 or 60 less students than Jessup Elementary has. So we've really evened out the elementary schools as well as the middle schools. And so, that's a natural occurrence when the elementary schools are even. They feed into the middle schools, so that kind of evens out the numbers. And it just makes it a lot easier on us to make sure we're providing the same quality and the same type of programs at each school.
And just joining us in the studios with us on the world famous Butch and Bob Show, School Superintendent Jay Brinson. School year's underway. As I mentioned, a lot going on with the Board of Education. One thing the board wants to do is implement a drug testing policy at the high school. You've been working on that. You mentioned last night you want to talk to the Vidalia principal, Camden principal, other school systems that have it in place. But it was mentioned last night that, you have to proceed with caution when you implement a policy like that. Make sure it's a fair policy, and it needs to be stressed, and it was stressed last night at the board meeting. This is not intended to be punitive.
No.
This is just mainly to make people aware
That's right.
that the students are making a bad decision. So
Sure.
it's really something that a lot of the board members are very much in favor of. They'd like to see it in place because they just think it's a worthwhile adventure.
And I am too. I think in implemented or developed and implemented in the right way, I think it can, make our schools safer and make the opportunities for kids to make bad choices even less. I think it's a numbers game. You have over 5,000 children in our school systems, and it's all about exposure. When you talk to law enforcement about drugs and alcohol, they'll talk a lot about access. They'll talk about if drugs and alcohol are prevalent in the home, or they have a car and they're easily, able to move around. They have more access to make those decisions. Are not, not good for them. And we're certainly not, like I said, it's not going to be developed to be a punitive thing. That's for the Sheriff Carter and Chief Mike Lane to handle that. We're not the law enforcement. We're educators. But at the same time, we do want to teach making good decisions. And some of those decisions where folks are exposed to drugs and alcohol at an early age, that really sets the path for them that really goes bad and affect them for the rest of their life. So that's what we're trying to deter. The consequences that I see down the road that would come out, it's not that we're certainly not looking to kick them out of school or, you had a bad test, dirty test, you're going to alternative school for the rest of the year. No, that's not the intent, and I don't see that, being the end game. But I do say, this child's, tested positive for illegal substance. We got to sit down and maybe get some counseling, talk about it, bring the parents in, maybe develop a contract and go from there. And then, maybe there are some consequences for privileges that, that students are afforded. Maybe there's a time period where, you do take a time out, or you are not able to participate in an activity for a certain amount of time. We certainly don't want to take away those extracurricular activities for the rest of their high school career. They're very important to young people.
And another good point that was made last night at the board meeting, peer pressure is a big thing among high school students. And if you had a drug testing policy in place, as you mentioned last night, talking to several principals, it gives that student an out. Like if he's at a party and they're trying to pressure him into taking drugs or drinking alcohol, he can say, well, I can't do it because I'll get tested. And if I test, I can't participate in whatever activity I'm in. So it gives the student a legitimate out.
That's right.
Among his peers,
That's
so to
exactly
speak.
right.
But you made that point last night.
Yeah, and that's the strongest point that another superintendent shared with me that he's seen so far in the 3 years. I think they've implemented that he's talking to students and talking to to teachers that's kind of coaches that are on that level with students talk freely to them. And I think that'd be the same thing here in Wayne County. I think we got the best kids in the United States here in Wayne County, Southeast Georgia. I think that's a different brand of kids than you have maybe in the metro Atlanta area. I think we got great kids. So I think if we do give them another tool, another out, like you said, I think some of them, when they do get that peer pressure, sometimes we get peer pressure from folks that are not even in school or out of school. They're not even from Wayne County. They're around and around our kids, unfortunately, and they do provide that access that I mentioned earlier, and next thing you know, things have gotten down the road and gotten bad. So, I said, I think it'd be a positive thing.
This has been discussed, last couple of months now at the board. What's been the reaction around town? Have you heard from parents? Are they in favor of this being implemented, or is there any backlash at all?
I think it's early, and everybody's going to have their opinions, and I think, when you hear it, it sounds like, you're trying to single out kids, you're picking on. Well, that's certainly not the case. We're just trying to, again, provide an out, make it a positive thing, maybe put kids' life on a different path than they take when they're 14 or 15 years old in high school. We have to keep in mind all the way even through high school, our kids are young adults. Their brains are still developing. They're not fully developed physically. So the decisions they're making and the rationales they have are still developing. They're not like mine and yours, Bob. They're, so that needs to be taken into account, and we're just trying to provide them the opportunities and the skills to go out in the world and be successful, make good decisions, and not start off with a mark against them. Life's tough out there.
Any timeline on when you think it'll be implemented? I know the board wants to do it sometime before the year's over. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you got to get the legal department.
I really don't. It just kind of depends. What I would like to do, and like I said last night, is talk to some folks, kind of get some maybe some bones of a couple of policies to put in front of our board and see what they really want in there, what they don't. And what we have to do is make sure that our local policies don't conflict or they can't supersede a state or federal law. So that's something we'll eventually get our legal folks to review and make sure we're in line.
Another thing came up first time I heard about it, this Stop It app. Explain that. The board was wondering if the parents understand what's taking place,
Yeah.
but apparently it's been implemented this school year. They mentioned last night several incidents have already been able to be avoided because of the Stop It app. Explain what the Stop It app is.
Yeah, it's an application, and we're just rolling it out. So the parents listening out there, you'll hear more about it. This is something we're trying to work out the bugs a little bit before we put it out to the mass and do kind of a media blitz to it. But this is a tool where it's just basically gives folks, again, gives young adults especially, but maybe even parents or a student's kin person that maybe is aware of something that can report what's going on. Something that's inappropriate in a child's life. May be in crises, or they may know something that's about to happen at school. Maybe it's a big fight. Maybe somebody's talked about bringing a weapon to school. Maybe somebody's in crises thinking about hurting themselves or hurting somebody. We want to know that. That's something that come through loud and clear last year with a couple, tragedies we had in our school system. The school system can only deal with what we know about, and we felt like that was a hole. So we felt like we need to strengthen that up. We want to have good. We work at having good relationships with students, but nowadays, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, they'll close off from adults. They naturally, are closed off. You have to really draw it out of them, and so that deters them from, or prevents them from really. Nobody wants to be a snitch. Nobody wants to be a tattletale. That's kind of frowned upon, and that's middle and high school age, mentality. So this is a tool where they can just report something anonymously about what's going on. We have contacts. It's an app they can download on the phone, and they submit a report, and it goes to certain levels of contacts within the school system. What I'm most excited about, it has a 24-hour monitoring system with it, that if it's not addressed or not closed out by one of our school personnel for whatever reason, maybe it's something over a long holiday, maybe it's something over the weekend, maybe it's something that's occurring at 12 o'clock at night, and everybody's asleep, but they're reporting it. Well, if it's that severe, it will automatically go to 911 emergency call. We go to the police or EMT, sheriff's office, and they would respond. They would be trying to get in touch with us, or they would go check on themselves if they have enough information. So again, it's just trying to strengthen up the knowledge of what we have. I remind people all the time, the school system certainly bears a heavy burden of trying to teach children a lot of things besides reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're trying to teach them, those life skills, how to make good decisions, how to, be a productive citizen, go out and get a job. But I'll remind everyone that, we only have them for 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, 180 days, and that's about 15% of the time of a calendar year. The other 85%, they're with their family, they're with the church, out in the community. They're not with the school system, and the point I'm making is we need help. We need that support. You have to have the whole community supporting these children and looking after them, and really have their best interests at heart, and communicate with us what's going on. So because that's what the research says, that any of these real severe events, violence at school, suicide, attempted suicide, somebody wants to hurt somebody. Before it happened, somebody knew. Somebody out in the community, somebody knew that person that made that decision to do something severe, knew. So that's what the app's up for. Let us know where we can get in front of it.
Another item that was discussed last night, test scores. It seems like every time you turn around, they're taking tests.
Right.
The state has their test scores, and you have to compare. But it was interesting. A lot of gains last night, a lot of areas, but some areas still,
Sure.
struggling. I saw it was interesting. U.S. history still struggling at the middle school and high school, but a lot of gains in a lot of other areas. Your overall assessment of the test scores that APT presented last night.
Overall, I was pleased with them, and I think it's tough to really, I guess, assess overall last year's test results, our last year's test results, and we'll get our CCRPI, our big accountability score and results here. It'd probably be the end of October before we get that. But those overall test results, it gives us some areas to focus, and it gives us some areas to celebrate. Fifth grade last year across the county was just tremendous. They had great scores, and then we had some other grades they were down a little bit. So we need to dig into that and see what made those teachers and those grades successful, and maybe replicate it in other grades. So I call it a typical year. And you just have to keep grinding at it and look at it, because there's so many factors in those test scores and what comes out of it. And it's one data point. We need to look at overall what's going on at school, overall what's going on with that class or even grade level of children.
Another area they discussed last night, something you had to do before the school year began, bus drivers.
Yeah.
It's constantly seeking bus drivers. They talked about last night. Some buses now are air conditioned, but most of the buses still not air conditioned. They're trying to find a way to help the bus drivers. But you met with the bus drivers before the year began to address some of their issues. How do you feel how that's progressing here in Wayne County?
Hey, yeah, I think we finally communicated with them enough to see what we were trying to do. That we were trying to improve what we're doing for them, as far as compensation, as far as retention. The new pay scale that we come up with really benefited the drivers that had been with us for a good period of time, and it kind of give. Our hope is to give a bus driver that maybe hasn't been with us that long to say, oh, well, if I stay here, another 10 years, I'm at this level, I'm making this amount of money, per hour, per year. Benefits is a big pull, but I think we felt like that compensation piece, even though they're only working 4 or 5 hours a day, was lacking. So hopefully that's going to, improve the quality and also the number of drivers that we have. We are on the cycle now. Mr. Simmons has been asked to go ahead and begin that cycle of ordering 5 air-conditioned school buses every year. So I'm pretty sure those have already been ordered. It's kind of a cycle they do in the same time every year. So they should be on the way, and next year we'll do another 5. And we've already had, I think, 2 or 3 already we purchased maybe last year. And so it'll take a few years for us to build up those, that fleet of air-conditioned buses. In the meantime, I thought Mr. Davidson had an idea he presented last night, something they were doing at Rainier, these ice vests. And so that's something I'm actually going to meet with Mr. Simmons when I leave here. We're talking about a lot of things, but I'm going to mention that to him to do a little research. If he can buy $80 vests for each driver, especially this time of the year, that they can utilize, it keeps them a little cooler. We want them to make sure they're cool and alert. And
look like a nice vest, like I said, it's got ice inside. Like I said, you freeze it at night, where it kind of keeps your body temperature down a little bit in this heat, because like I said, it's got to be hot on those school buses.
It is. It's very hot this time of year. I mean, it's like that every year. It gets a little warm in the spring as well, but it's extremely hot right now with the humidity and heat index, and over 100 degrees is hot.
And what's amazing to me, every school board meeting you go to, personnel is always the agenda. It just seems like, is there that much turnover all the time? I mean, it's like constantly searching people.
Unfortunately, we have a lot more than we wish we did, and some of that, like last night, we're pretty full. But we had a couple folks, that started the year that could retire. And I said, well, you know what, I think I'm just going to go ahead and retire. And folks are always trying to better themselves. You can't fault folks for trying to better themselves. They get a better opportunity. In Wayne County, we wish them the best and go on. But, with 800 employees and, all the different things that kind of go into it, we only work, people forget, we really only work 190 days. They do get a paycheck, but that paycheck, we spread it out over 12 months. So when you take out benefits and some of our positions, especially our parapros, that's something that's on the radar. We really need to consider, trying to improve what we're doing for them. Again, it's about competing. And some of our positions just don't compete out there in the corporate world because we'd only work 190 days or so. So you look at that paycheck at the end of the month, it gets kind of tough to compete.
And going back to the numbers, the Georgia High School Association, every 2 years they realign everything. And as you mentioned, 1,400 at the high school. You mentioned last night you don't see us moving out of a classification at all. But I say Georgia High School still talks about possibly getting rid of that 7 class and going back to 6, but I don't know if they're going to do that or not. But you think we're pretty much set in 5A at this time?
Well, I'll say you never know what the Georgia High School is going to do, and they certainly don't listen to Jay Brinson, so I'll start with that. But there has been some discussion about going back to 6 classifications. It's gotten a lot of pushback from systems around the state, and on the inside, I'm hearing they're backing off of that. Maybe they'll allow it to pick it back up. Dr. Robin Hines, sometimes he's not afraid to step out there and just say I'm the executive director and this is what we're doing. But if it stays at 7, I think we're not going to change it all. If it goes to 6, I'm not sure where that puts us. That could affect things. We could slide to 4, but I really think we may go to 4, but we'll be in the middle of 4, just kind of like we're like in the middle of 5A.
I'll still give you kudos. When you were high school principal, you said, it's got to be numbers against numbers. We were at a disadvantage, and you said, look, we got to get where we can compete.
Right.
Can't compete against Savannah schools that have all these numbers. So we're finally in the classification where we are competing numbers against numbers. Wayne County stacks up pretty well.
We do, and that's about being fair to kids. What wasn't fair in the past, back in the olden days when I coached, was if we wanted to play in our classification, we were traveling to Bainbridge, Jones County, Crisp County.
Right.
That's just not feasible in this day and age.
Well, like I said, it wasn't a fair city. Like I said, they got that many more numbers of kids than we did. So
no doubt,
it's good to be in that same classification. So.
Right. I remember when we had a real strong baseball team back in 2002 with Barrett Bryan and Ryan Aldridge, Casey Martin, a lot of talented guys on that team. But you look up, we're playing against the highest classification in the state of Georgia. Jeff Francoeur and
Dexter Fowler.
Those guys that are playing on TV, Dexter Fowler's still playing.
Right.
That gets, it's all about a numbers game.
I still remember the show he put on that day. I said, that kid's pretty good. And like I said, he's still playing in the major leagues today.
That's exactly right.
But it is a good time of year. Like I said, a lot going on. We've got, new programs. Volleyball just started a couple of years ago. We've got a wrestling program now. Just keeps expanding. It's an exciting time. Football season here. They had a nice event the other night, Meet the Jackets. That was a good thing. So a lot of excitement in the community. Like I said, Wayne County fans love their teams, love their sports, support them as good as anybody across the state. So it should be a fun year. It
is. Everything's kicked off cross country, softball, of course, football, cheerleading, wrestling's getting going, volleyball. And I always say that those first sports that kick off the school year, all those activities with the band and what they do and what their plans, they got some really exciting big plans as well. That sets the tone for the whole school year at the high school especially, and it filters out because everyone in Wayne County has somebody at the high school, whether it's a student, a son, daughter, granddaughter, niece, nephew, or somebody that works there. Everybody's got somebody at Wayne County High School that they're tuned into, and they get information from there. So I really believe that kind of sets the tone for the whole school year.
Well, again, as we mentioned, a lot going on in the school system. I said a lot of projects underway, a lot of projects to soon begin. But, always appreciate you coming in and informing the community what's going on. You're always welcome. So look forward to a great school year. Appreciate you coming in.
Appreciate you.
Okay, Jonathan, that's going to do it for the world famous Butch and Bob Show.
All right, the world-famous Butch and Bob Show on WIFO-FM, brought to you this morning by Murphy Builder Supply, Nips Car Wash, and Sachero Restaurant. Good morning from the Big Dog, WIFO-FM, 8:28 on this Wednesday morning, the 14th day of August.
The world famous Butch and Bob Show.